Hello, Chris. How the devil are
Yeah,
you?
I'm really good. Thanks, you.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. You know how it is, just generally surviving, like us all. Um, so, um, I'm just messing about with my camera a little bit here, so my apologies, listeners. Um, we have recently done some recording together of interviews.
Who
Um,
was this? What?
you kind of interviewing me about a documentary about the legendary Milton Keynes Woughton Centre. Um, and so for listeners, is there any update on that? Is it going to be available to the masses at any point, or
It
where are
is,
you at?
yeah. We've managed to do the first 2 minutes, 31 seconds.
Brilliant.
Completely finished. Um, it's been a real trial because trying
Yeah,
to get permission to use the music is impossible
yeah,
uh, because of the kind of paying for each of the tracks that we would use.
yeah,
We have found a way around it, and we found a way to do certain things. But the problem with that is you can only show the film once. So that's not the
mm,
right way. So what we're going to do is probably make the film, show it that once, but then take the music out that we can't use because it's pointless. We've got some music that artists have allowed us to use because they haven't done anything with the copyright stuff or anything,
yeah,
because they've allowed that to happen.
yeah.
But it's really sad because without the music, it doesn't tell the story. But the photographs, we've got thousands and thousands of photographs of nearly every band that was there. So it's just been really good. I mean, you feature it quite heavily. I mean, Pete from Lawnmower Death does. The Almighty feature in it heavily as well, and lots of the crew and people who were there. And it's just been a great journey. And we went down to Marshall's the other night to video a guy who from the press had a couple of uh, well, I suppose they're still either promoters or managers. So it's been quite good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And whilst that music issue is a problem, um, I kind of feel like it's not. I'm sure it's a real frustration for you, and I understand that, and it would be ideal. But by the same token, um, you don't you don't need the music to tell the story because
Absolutely.
you've got the people there who created the music, were there at the time, and this is a documentary as much as about a piece of time, but also of a venue, of a building. Do you know what I mean? It's kind
Yeah.
of like anybody watching it or who has any interest in it knows who the bands are, knows what that music is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's the stories that make it. Because when I listen to the stories, because I've been listening to it over and over again, picking bits out from it and stuff like this, you think, God, what a great thing. I wish I was still doing it now because
Yeah.
it was just such a vibrant place and everybody loved it. We had people from all over the world come to it. Europe, especially. I mean, we had for some of the bands from Scandinavia, we used to have people from all over Europe coming. So we might have a crowd of 500, and we'd have 150 of those would be from Germany, Finland, Denmark, Norway, all over the place. It was amazing. And we still used to get letters from them for ages afterwards as well.
That's and I mean, again, that speaks to the era. People writing to like a venue team, and kind of like being pen friends and getting thank you letters. It's just yeah, it's. I think, well, I said earlier, it's a piece of time, isn't it? It's just that.
It is. And you find things out you don't know. In Adam Parsons, who is an agent and is manager of many bands, we interviewed him because he was with the Almighty at the time. He was doing
Yeah.
some stuff with them in England. And he said to me, he said, the pitch is brilliant. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I brought my band there. I said, what was your band? Belladonna.
Oh my God.
Belladonna was the band. He was the drummer.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you were the drummer of Belladonna. And he said, yeah. And you said the guy was our vocalist, was the best ever vocalist you'd heard so far since you've been promoting. You gave him a bottle of champagne. And I thought they were brilliant, but he left, the lead singer left, and they lost their deal. They were about to get a deal and they lost it. So, you
Oh
know,
God. Yeah. And there goes, 100 bands story.
yeah,
We nearly got signed.
that's right.
Yeah. But the things that you must have seen at the venue. I mean, slightly treading on stuff that we spoke about at the venue, but um, I always remember when we came back. I think it was touring Obnoxious, which was like that was the big show. That's the show that's on our YouTube channel to this day. And I remember that I had to address the issue of there being a barrier, and and it was really easy to address because basically you'd had somebody who'd broken their leg in at a gangrene show. I don't know why I remember this so well, but you'd had somebody break their leg at a gangrene show, and either the local council or a solicitor or whoever had basically said, unless you put a barrier in place and calm this stuff down, you're going to get shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. But the funny thing was, the guy who dived off the speaker and broke his legs, he, after 6 weeks in traction, he came back in his wheelchair to the gig. It was just amazing. But that was some gig, and I'll never forget that first. The band that really made it almost not happen was Napalm Death, because they were kicking the people in the pit from behind, and they were getting the crowd to punch him from the front and wouldn't do anything about it. So we had to pull the crowd the pit in the end. And the drummer from Napalm Death, he's going like, he's in the foyer. It's the World Cup's on. We're all watching the football. And he's in the foyer where there's giant screen telly, the first of its kind. One of those with three big bulbs sticking out and it shimmering as you watched it. And he's there and he's going like this. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, and then made himself sick on the screen in front of everybody. And people just turned around and thought, "Oh, what did you do that for?" Just that sort of stuff.
What did you do that for? Everybody's watching the World Cup.
But it was just class.
Absolutely insane.
But people,
It's kind of weird. I mean, the fact that Milton Keynes, was a new town. Um,
it's a city now.
right, well, of course, yeah. My apologies, my apologies. But the fact that Milton Keynes was a new town at the time, and I mean, relatively new, you became a kind of like a cultural phenomenon within that new town. Because I mean, I'm presuming before the pits at Woughton Centre, there was just there was nothing like that elsewhere in Milton Keynes.
No, that's right. It was a strange baptism of fire because I came from a venue in Oxford, and came to see the Fall at this venue. And the next thing I know, a guy said to me, we were talking at things, he says, "Do you want to apply for a job? Because there's one going here." So I sent the application. It had to be in for the Monday. So I took it in on the Sunday after the gig. And then Monday, the deadline date, I got this thing, came back and said, "We'd like to come for an interview." So I went for an interview, got the job. And it was things, really weird things I'd never heard of before, loads and loads of fringe theatre. Now, I had to make fringe theatre work, so I started putting on strip shows, male strippers for women. And any of the money that came in from those male strip shows would go into putting the bands on in the initial stages before the pit started. And then this guy took me to the Arts Council in the middle of this massive, great meeting with all these really kind of top venues there. He said, "You want to do what Chris does? He puts on male strippers to make money to put the arts on." And all these women stood up. Some of them walked out and others were good. "I can't believe you're doing that sort of thing. It's disgusting." And I just said, "But how else are we going to put it on? We can't afford to do it. You need grants to do a lot of this stuff, and we're getting 3 and 4 people coming to it, but we feel we should do it. Therefore, we need to make the money somehow." And after that, it started to really ramp up. So when the guy who was headed up the arts before me at the venue, he came to me and said, "Look, you start a local band scene here that then starts to be more professional." He said, "I'll fund it from the Development Corporation." So he gave me some seed funding and we started it, and it had loads of local bands on. But after about a month and a half, we found there was no local band apart from one called the Blues Collective who could actually bring in any money. Now, the beauty of the Blues Collective was they were made up of 15 bands with people all playing together, playing Blues Brothers music, right? So you put them on, they brought all the support of us, all 15 bands, and then you'd fill the whole place. You could even fill the sports hall with them. Um, so that was kind of the saving grace, really. And it went on from strength to strength. So then I brought in one band a month. And within a few months, it was two bands a week, and then it was band every night, and it just grew. And we started with some of, some of the really, really struggling bands that were the last on the rosters of the agents.
that
But
would agree to come to Milton Keynes.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And suddenly it started to build, and then they started saying, "Oh, would you like this band? Would you like that band?" Now, funnily enough, it wasn't until I spoke to one of the agents who we interviewed who said to me, most people would have given their eye teeth to come to Milton Keynes because of the kind of venue it was. He said, "You don't know this, but we were offering you these bands, even though they were cheaper than we normally did. You could have had them at a really knocked down price if you pushed, but you didn't actually know how good people thought it was." And I thought, no, I didn't. So, and then it just built from there. And we, in the end, I mean, the pinnacle, I suppose, was Iron Maiden, playing to 500 people under the auspices of the Holy Smokers. But to me, the real music that I loved, which was there, was thrash. Because
Yeah.
it was the first time I ever saw thrash was that Exodus gig, right? Because I hadn't put a thrash band on before then.
So
And
we must have been on that show.
you were
We must have been supporting on that show because I think it was
the first
I
big
think
tour here.
yeah, I think the first time Exodus really hit the UK was Fabulous Disaster in
Yeah,
1989.
that was it.
And we supported on, on all those shows. Um, so that must have been our first experience of playing Milton
Yeah.
Keynes as well.
It was really interesting though, because when they came in, they were pretty sullen and just moving around, and everybody was, and I thought, it's packed tonight. What's going to happen tonight? And suddenly there's people falling on the floor. There's people coming out with smashed in faces. There's blood all over the place, the floor, vomit on the curtains. And I'm going, wait, this is great. This is what we want. And so it was just absolutely brilliant. And I'll always remember stood in there watching people diving all over the place above, the barrier and everything. I think, God, this is amazing. Not even thinking health and safety. Oh, what are we doing? Now I was thinking, these kids are loving it. This is what we need here. So
Yeah.
that's how it kind of really, by then I think 87, 88, we must have been 2 and a bit years old. Oh no, yeah, or 1 and a bit years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The thing is, it's interesting as well. You're talking about the kind of history of booking bands there as well, because I mean, you did it exactly as you would do now. Softly approach, but you kind of, I mean, you were in totally unknown waters. You kind of had to prove not just to other people, but to yourself that people would come to the Woughton Centre to see bands.
yeah, that's true. And that was quite a sobering thing, because when you suddenly found the kind of people who were coming, you wanted to keep that audience there as well. So you'd put more of those bands on. And I mean, we were putting all sorts of things on. I mean, I tried jazz, didn't work. Tried folk, that was pretty successful. We tried blues, that was really successful. But when it was rock and thrash, it was brilliant. And indie, I mean, we had loads and loads of indie bands there who became really big. And I'm thinking, oh, this is just amazing. These people playing our venue. And I didn't realize it was on the back of the rock that these people were coming, because they'd heard about the club and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I remember 1,000 yard stare coming off stage, and the manager says, "Sign this." I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's a contract for the same price next year." And I said, "What now?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I want to sign it now." I said, "Okay, why?" He said, "Because we love this venue." And I thought, okay. So I signed it. They never got as big as they would, but
Yeah.
or could have done. But we still had a reasonable crowd for them next year, and it was cheap, so it was worthwhile.
But it's amazing that because you know, now when I think about it, you think, yeah, you know, you were delivering something to a community in Milton Keynes that, you know, you didn't know existed, but also you you could pull from the surrounding area as well. You know, you've got Bedford just up the road.
Yeah.
You've got Northampton that now yeah, Northampton Road Menders, you know, yeah, plenty of people have played there. But the established venues wouldn't book thrash.
No.
So if you put thrash on in Milton Keynes, you were getting people from towns in the surrounding area that thrash was considered a no-go. So with you putting it on, you weren't just, you know, serving the Milton Keynes crowd. You were doing like a community service for the metal community in the surrounding areas.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you're right. The most interesting thing about that is that both Bedford and London gravitated towards us for thrash.
Yeah, because you get
Especially
people from
Birmingham.
London as well. Yeah.
That's right, especially Birmingham. Because I mean, there was a guy called Dave who used to bring me all sorts of bands like Martial Law and all this kind of stuff. And suddenly he started getting some thrash bands in Birmingham. We put them on as support. And then you'd have bands like Zentrix come in, all these kind of bands. And we'd have a local support with them who just started playing thrash. And it was really good because it gave the local bands a run out as well. But the beauty of it was that the Americans logged into it. And then
Yeah.
we'd have things like Babes in Toyland, and we'd have all of these bands and bands like Ice Age from Scandinavia, and all of them coming over. Then we had that guy with Messiah Marcolin from Cal
Candlemass.
comes
Yeah.
across with his monk's garb on, and the people who came to it, said, how are you getting these bands here? And I'm thinking, I have not got a clue because I didn't know. But the thing about it was, when we were starting to pull these kind of bands, it in the first instance, what I used to do is I had 5 people, 5 lads, and we used to go out in cars and go all over with these massive great posters, wallpaper paste in subways, all over the surrounding areas. And then one morning I got a call Friday morning from Milton Keynes Council. Unless you take these posters down, we're going to fine you £1,000 a poster. So we had to go out and scrape them all off the wall. So, you know, that's what it was all about. We go to little villages and put a massive, great thrash poster up on the local church notice board, you know, this kind of stuff was great.
And at least you got a warning from the council. Let's
Yes,
be
I
honest.
did.
That's fair enough. But also, but also, given um, again Milton Keynes' new town status and there not being that much going on, presumably you also, you know, you got regulars who would basically, oh, they'd come to a thrash show, they'd come to a metal show, they'd come to a rock show, they'd come to a glam show because
Yeah.
it's and you know because they knew that they bump into like-minded people. It might not necessarily be their music, they might be hair metal fans, but they'd be at a thrash gig, and that's because it's, well, it's close enough. It's a metal night.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the community was quite interesting. One of the people we interviewed for the film was telling us about there's a clock in the center of Milton Keynes in the shopping center. And all the metal kids, before they came to a gig, used to congregate around the clock. And they knew that the thoroughfare would take people into the city from the station, and then people would come into and they'd spot people and wave them over if they look like a metal fan. Say, you're going to the gig tonight, come with us, we're all going drinking. So people would then gravitate towards the clock in the centre of Milton Keynes as a meeting place for the community. And I mean, all of my crew, the girls who did the food, the people who looked after stuff, the people who sold tickets, they were all part of the metal scene because they were people who would say, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I want to do that. And so, and all they wanted was either a plectrum, a band t-shirt, or wanted a set list from the front of the stage. That was all they wanted. And they've still
Yeah.
got them. You know, they were bringing them out when we were doing it and saying, have you seen this and this kind of stuff? But it's, I mean, it's those kind of things. And the things that made it special for me were when Ozzy Osbourne turns up at the venue for the choir boys. And of course, there's all the crew there with their arms around him like this, which is absolutely brilliant because they had got to be able to do that. Sam Brown comes in, the singer, and she says, can I have dinner with the crew? I said, of course you can. And the crew were like, oh, having dinner with Sam Brown, that's magic. And
Yeah.
people could do all that sort of thing. But if they weren't well looked after by the production, then they didn't want to work. And some of the production nights they had were awful, especially with Death Angel. Oh, that was one of the worst nights. Pure
Wow.
awful.
But what happened?
Well, what happened was they had a German tour manager, and the guy, when he came in, worse than American tour manager, and they're bad. But this German tour manager comes in and he goes, "You'll put this up, I'm not up there, and do this and do that." No, the guy's got
Yeah.
a crew, and they're all sat there on the stage watching them like this. So they started put it, and then they put it somewhere, and the guy go, "No, that comes down, it goes over here," and he did it every time. And in the end, he hit one of the guys, and they all stopped working. So he said, "They must work, they must work." I said, "We'll treat them with some courtesy then." And so in the end, he started working with them, grumbling and everything. Anyway, that night, the band went back. I had a real problem because the guy who was with the band had thrown all the food over the walls and put a big bowl of curry in the piano that we had downstairs in the green room. And
Oh,
I'd refused to pay him. And what had happened was that I met Vicious Rumours was supporting, and the guitarist of Vicious Rumours was outside the room when they were throwing it about. And the girls came running down to me crying, and I went up there. And he goes, "I won't go in there. He's wanted in America, mate. Oh, and there'll be ructions if you go in." So I went in and I just shouted at him. I said, "What are you doing?" So that's pathetic. And he made him look really small. So he stopped doing it in the end. And then I got a phone call from the agent saying, "You didn't pay the band last night." And I said, "No, I'm not paying them till they've cleaned the piano out or paid for it to be cleaned. We'll have to take you to court then." But they settled just the day before we were due to go to court.
yeah.
We got the money for the thing. But that night, the next day after that gig, I was in my office and I got a phone call from the German tour manager, and he said, I said, "Is that Chris? Have you had a file of facts handed in? I'm really worried because all the tour dates are in it." And I looked at my
Right.
desk in the corner, there was a file of facts there. I said, "No." And so then what happened was the guys came in for the day, and they said, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you want to have a look at this file of facts?" Says, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's from the tour manager last night." And they went outside and they burnt it page by page in the courtyard. It was a class, and this Jane, who was my assistant, looking out the window, just crying with laughter as they burnt it one by one. So it's that sort of thing. And I mean, meeting people like you see, I never used to go in and meet the bands unless it was guys like you, because
Yeah.
I wasn't into kind of meeting famous people. But you guys to me were just great blokes and good friends, really. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it was just brilliant. But one night I saw that we had put Dweezil and Ahmed Zappa on under the Z banner. And Mike Keneally and the rest of Zappa's band were there playing with him. And we had a guy outside who I can't say too much about, but just to say he was outside, he was stopping anybody getting in with something he should never have been stopping people to get in with. And that was because there were threats out on Frank Zappa's life. And anyway, I went in and there was a band called CNN. Do you remember them? A kind of indie metal band, CNN.
I'm not sure I do know.
Well, they had this amazing T-shirt, which was like the news T-shirt, but it had like
Right.
it was about that wide, and it had this picture of the three of them on it. It was like it was kind of a news flash. And I walked in, and Mike Keneally went, "I want that." I was looking around, and it was my T-shirt, and he said, "What do you want for it?" And so I thought, and I snapped a piece of a shelf off, piece of wood like that, and they all signed their names on it and put to me. And I gave him a T-shirt, and they gave me a Z T-shirt to put on, and just went out with this amazing piece of wood that I've still got with everybody from Frank Zappa's band's signature. And that was just
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah, because that's
That
what
is
it is.
awesome.
It's never, to me, working in this industry has never been about money,
Yeah.
because that's not how it works, really. You can be famous and earn a lot of money, but do you have a good life? Probably not, because there's too many things to do. It's just what it's all about.
Yeah, but also I think you know, back in those times, it was a venue that kind of it came from nowhere. I mean, I remember the first time we played it, which must have been on that Exodus tour. I remember
Yeah.
playing it and just being like, it was like a magical mystery tour. Because every road looked the same. It was countless roundabouts. We got to the venue. It looked like a school sports hall. It was like a community hub. It was basically everything that every venue we played wasn't. It was more like doing a gig in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we didn't know that at the time because we hadn't done any gigs in Europe. But looking back on it, it was more like a gig in Europe because everywhere where you're going in the UK and playing, we're just playing shitholes. You just playing shitholes. You're playing places that have got, huge, Bristol Beer Keller, historic venues that have been around for years, or you're playing shitholes or whatever. And then you turn up at Milton Keynes, for a start, Woughton Centre. We're all going, and our drummer was called, Mark Woughton, and we'd always, we'd call it the Woughton Centre. And and we were looking at it, and the first time we turned up, we were just like, but this is like going back to fucking school. This is bizarre. And as we discussed in the when we were talking about it before for the movie, it was bizarre for us because we'd only just left school. So 1989, we've only left school a couple of years ago. By the time we're playing a venue that looks like a school, and yet not only are we not getting, not only are the staff not looking down their noses at us, like we're the feature attraction and people are asking us if we're all right and what would we like to eat and drink and is everything okay? The opposite experience we've all had a few years previously of being in school. So as I've said before, I think that meant that we bonded with the staff and the venue and the crowd and just everything about it. And I remember all of us kind of coming back going like, well, Milton Keynes, total unknown quantity, we'll go there, it'll be shit. And yes, it was an unknown quantity. It wasn't what we were expecting, but we came away just going, well, can't wait to go back there. And the thing is, we'd supported as well. And I think even on the night, you were like, do you guys want to come back and headline this? We're like when? Next week? We're there.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
right. That was what it was like. There's so many things I loved about that place when we had bands on. I mean, I always remember when Babes in Toyland came and they Doogie Daggers. Do you remember Doogie Daggers?
Oh yeah. Well, he mentioned he managed Zentrix for a while as well.
Yeah. Well, he came with them, and he said to me, he came in my office, he says, "All right, Chris, can my girls swim in the swimming pool?" So I went downstairs and I asked the school if they were using it that day. No, yeah, they can. So anyway, off they go in the swimming pool. Lunchtime comes, and all these kids on the window like that watching these throwing and going from top of the pool, and it was just brilliant.
We had our own experience with that. I remember going swimming. In fact, yeah, no, I did. And funnily enough, we did the show, but I remember halfway through looking at Ramsey, our drummer, and I just went over during the song. I was like, "Are you all right?" And he was just drumming away, going, "No, I'm fucked."
It's
And I
because
was
it's
like,
so hot as well in
"Yeah,
there.
yeah." And
Yeah.
it was like, I'm never going swimming before a gig again, ever. And I remember on the we played the show and we drove straight back to Harrogate that night. And he literally fell asleep the minute we got in the van and didn't wake up until we got back to Harrogate because he was just absolutely exhausted. Because yeah, it was like we were young and stupid. It didn't occur to us for a minute that if we go for a swim, it might take it out of us a bit for the hour plus show we were going to be doing later. Oh no,
Uh,
fucking
yeah.
mental, absolutely ridiculous.
It
But
was.
the thing is though, you talk about some of the sort of rock aristocracy that came to the venue, but the thing about the pit certainly in the early years was well, like I said, like even in like 1990, you know, you had everybody you had Nuclear Assault, you had Gangrene, you had. I mean, if there was a thrash band coming round, then they'd be playing Milton Keynes Woughton Centre.
Yeah,
I
yeah, no,
mean, th
absolutely right.
that must have made you incredibly proud as well, because you just became a staple of most like half decent tours.
Well, it's right. I mean, I got offered the job as Pearl Jam's agent, part of the way through my time towards the end of my time at the centre. Rod McSween
Wow.
came down to the venue and he said, I've been watching you. You've sold all my gigs out for the last 12 gigs we've given you. And it was at a Sea Hags gig. Um, and he just came up to my office and said, right, he said, how would you like to be an agent? You'd have Pearl Jam because my agent's just leaving. All right. He said, also, you'll have, who was it? Did Cornflake go? Some indie woman. And another band that,
Oh, was it not Tori Amos, was it?
yeah, Tori Amos.
Bloody
Yes.
hell.
And one of them, which was, I really, really loved, it was a band with two saxophonists, Morphine. What a band
Right.
they were, two saxophonists. The lead singer died on stage doing a poem in Switzerland.
Shit.
And then the band went off and then came back on and played the rest of the thing without him because that's what they knew he'd wanted him to do.
The show must go on.
I think this is just
And you,
amazing.
you've got to be the only person that was ever offered Pearl Jam, Tori Amos, and some band called Morphine, right? You must be the only person who's ever thought that the focus of those three was fucking the band Morphine.
That's because
Maybe that's why you didn't take the job, mate.
but they were the best band out of the three of them. Brilliant. No, it was the fact that I had three young kids and I'd have been
Yeah,
flying all over the world again. And I just wasn't in the space to do that. And I was so excited when I got home. And my wife said to me, I'll support you, whatever you do. And I thought, nah, this is wrong. I just need to do it my way. So I did and didn't go. And I've never ever regret it. It was really funny because I was walking across an airport one day in Prague when I was working in Prague. Actually, I went to see Sabotage that night, and the Zentrix crew were their crew. So the Zentrix band were their crew. So I'm
right.
sitting there, they're all tapping me on the shoulder in this really weird theatre in the middle of Prague. Anyway, walking across the airport, and who should be coming the other way is Rob McSween, who's quite small, with this kind of enormous, tall, Amazonian-looking woman. I went, wow, like that. And he walked towards me and went, bet you're regretting it now, eh? And I went, nah. I walked off. And every time I turned around, he kept turning around and looking at me. Because I
Brilliant.
didn't regret it. I did not regret it because I'd done some great things, you know. It's
Yeah.
what it was all about.
And are you still in the area?
In Milton Keynes,
Yeah.
yeah, I've lived in Milton Keynes for nearly 40 years. I went here, came here for a year and stayed 40. But I've always worked outside of it, apart from when I worked at the venue. So I worked at a university for years and years and became a pro vice chancellor, then left, went back in the industry to have my own business in crowd safety. Really, it's looking at different spaces and doing a project on how crowds move in those spaces and how we can make them better. I've done it all over the world, different venues in right as far afield as Australia, and I've done a lot of Europe. I've just done a big AEG project for them and with their venues. So and still
Wow.
I do all sorts of events. So I did a project on rap and why after COVID it was causing so many problems in venues, and it came down to the fact it wasn't actually the rappers and their audience, even though their audience were taking a few more liberties at the time, but it was more likely to be that the crowd, the people who were working there were coming back into a venue and you have a big rap gig and they couldn't remember back to the last one, but it was no different. It was still as manic and as difficult to deal with. And you know why it is? Because you've got to understand the culture.
Yeah.
Once you understand the culture, it's okay. It's how you treat so many people in the industry, treat people like they're shit.
Yeah.
And you go in there and you watch these kids jumping round and round and having a brilliant time. You think, yeah, this is great. And you've got to understand why they do what they do, what each of the different types, what grime, rap, Afrobeats, what they mean and what they mean to the different people and the countries and who's there. And then you can understand it. So you apply your service exactly like it should be for that kind of music. And to me,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. It's about service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the thing is as well is I've always said this, and this applies to a house party, to a music venue, to whatever. And that is if if you turn up and the place is a shithole, you will treat it like shit. And if
Absolutely.
you turn up and the place is really well put together and everyone's nice, you'll treat it like it's your own house.
Yeah.
But if people in the bars are taking the piss, if the security treat you like shit, and if the place has got sticky floor and clearly no one's spent any money on it, as long as you can establish that the venue's even been alive, then why should you look after it? Why should you behave nicely when clearly they don't give a shit?
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, with the venue itself, because it belonged to the council, it was on a zero budget. So if I had 6 grand over, you bought the curtains, otherwise you'd lose it. If you or you
Yeah.
buy the PA or you put the new set of lights in, because that's what it was all about. And I always remember the one person everybody loved was Nancy, the Irish cleaner. Now, I thought she was about 80 when she worked for us, but she's still alive now, so she can't have been. And the thing about it, I always remember it was gay bikers on acid came, and I only had a check. I couldn't pay cash. And I offered them the check and they tore it up. And so we all went home and they cleared out. And Nancy comes in the next morning. Then I come in after her like this. And I go into the venue and I'm shouting, Nancy, Nancy, where are you? Lights are on and everything. And I go by the shower room and there's a pair of feet sticking out of the shower room. So I went in and she's fainted. And I go inside and they've wiped shit all over the walls in the room and she'd had to come in to clean it.
Oh,
And
bless
I
her.
couldn't believe it. But she used to be there on the night, scrubbing the vomit off the curtains when somebody been sick. She'd come in with a bucket of water and scrub it off. She'd do anything because she loved that place. She loved the people in it. She didn't love the music, but
Yeah.
liked it because everybody else loved it. And she'd see us standing there doing this. She
Do you
was,
know what? Do you know what? I've just remembered. I've just remembered that the dressing rooms were basically the changing rooms for the gym.
yeah,
Yeah. And I remember that we had a dressing room that was like a changing room from our school days. But also, we'd seen bands like Our Heroes, and we'd seen photo sessions in dressing rooms that looked like sports changing rooms. And now we found ourselves in that situation. And it was like, wow, there was a little bit of that kind of like, we've made it. We're getting changed in a sports hall dressing room. Do you know what I mean? There was
yeah,
there was that element of wow, this is one of those boxes ticked. You know,
yeah,
it was like one of those moments where it was just kind of like, whoa, this is different. Because again, we were playing venues that had been established for years and were all, had been music venues for years, and then just playing this new town and this like municipal building in the middle of nowhere. We didn't know what we were going to get out of it. And we got so much, and so many. You must have had so many bands just keep coming back.
yeah, we did. And it's just a testimony to how much they like the venue. And it was amazing that some bands came back about. I mean, if you think about the Almighty, they graduated from the small room to the big room, but they still wanted to come back. Um, and that was between, I think it was probably between the Astoria and somewhere fairly big in Edwards, not Edwards number 8, one of the other ones in Birmingham. And we were always the smallest venue, Nuclear Assault, when they played there. We were the smallest venue they played on the tour. I mean, they'd just come from the Astoria then to play us. And I always remember the guitarist walking through the door and says, I'm not playing this shit. Also, the guy Dave Brightman in the lighting box, bless him, opened it and said, "Well, you can fuck off home then," and shut the door like that. And that's why he was so angry about what we were doing. And
Brilliant.
that's why he came up at the end and said to me, "Best gig ever." So,
That's awesome now as well. You know, when you turn stuff that like that around. But but also I think, you know, talking about the difference in the venue compared with the difference in other venues we'd play. I always remember feeling like when we'd turn up and straight away it'd be like, "Oh, hi Chris, hi Zones," you know, there's faces we'd recognize straight away. And
yeah,
it'd be like, "Oh, all right, guys, nice to see you." And just that sense of we're all in it together. And it still felt we were fresh, wide-eyed kids, you know, doing our first proper gigs, our first proper tours. But I felt kind of like the crew were also a little bit like that. They were kind of fresh faced. They were doing their first gigs and they were having that experience. So it was like we were all in it together. Whereas we'd go to, you know, as previously mentioned venues, and you know, to a certain extent, you deal with some fairly jaded people who is it's just another band, etc. But
you're
you
right.
coming to your place, it was always kind of like, well, it's like it's run by fans. Do you know? That's how it felt.
But this is the thing about it is this is it all stems from where the first time I went to a gig was 1973, Uriah Heep, Magician's Birthday Tour. And I went in that venue and I thought, bloody hell, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And from that day on, that was where really the calling was coming from. And when I got to the venue and I started this Pits Club off, and these lads came in, I thought, let's give them a go. Do you guys want to be pit crew? You guys want to do setup for the gigs? Yeah, so we had some training set up. I got all of that set up. And then we used to do regular training. In the end, they were taking the training for new people coming in.
Yeah,
And they never, ever let you down. Never, ever let you down. They'd turn their hand to anything. They'd help. They'd take, I mean, we had a folk band in one night, huge folk band in the other room, sold out. And the curtains went up and down 4 times before I said, no, these guys have done this 4 times. It takes 40 minutes to put the curtains up and then 40 minutes to take them down. I'm not doing it again. You've had them on since 8 o'clock this morning. It's now 4 in the afternoon. Surely you know what you want, up or down. And in the
yeah,
end, they left them up. But these guys would do anything. And it was because they were next to their heroes. And
yeah.
I thought, to me, that's where I always wanted to be. They were a lot closer than I ever was when I was a kid. I mean, we were back because we weren't promoters, we couldn't do that kind of stuff. But they could go, they could do it, they could be in a band, they could play on our stage if they wanted. We had people in the crew like Jeff, who was guitarist for, what's it called? Spontaneous Human Combustion. You know, and they went on to support Manic Street Preachers at the Mini Bowl. You know, it's that sort of thing because that's what it's all about. It's that community, the whole business. Yeah.
I've just remembered. I think it's Milton Keynes. I'm sure that you used to have photographers in the pit, and one of them looked vaguely like James Whale.
Yes.
And I got him on stage and forced him to take a picture of the crowd whilst we all chanted "You fat bastard" at him.
But you know, he disappeared because what happened was he got abused by Iron Maiden's security staff because they wondered what he was doing on stage. They asked him for his film and he refused to give it and handed it over to me. Um, but I can see why they did it because they thought he was, you know, just taking pictures for no reason. But he was our photographer. He was brilliant at taking photos. And the only reason I had to take photos in the end because I don't know where he went. But
Wow.
it's great. Dave, if I knew where he was, I've tried the other week, I tried 4 different Daves who were photographers in Milton Keynes trying to find out where he was and can't find him anywhere because he's got.
Dave, if you're listening, get in touch.
Oh, that would be brilliant because we'd love him to use some more of his photos in the film.
Yeah,
But
because do you know what? I think he's on. I think he's on that 1990 video that's on our YouTube channel. I think he's. I think that is the gig where we got him out the crowd. And yeah, and took the piss. But that's something as well that we usually, well, we kind of did. We'd get crew involved. Do you know what I mean? It's like we'd get everybody to shout hello to the monitor, the monitor mix guy.
Yeah.
Well, no one else does that. Do you know what I
No.
mean? It was always like, well, they're part of it. It's something I still do to this day, which is like, get everybody to like give a cheer for the bar staff, and yeah, everybody's part of it. The guy doing front of house, the guy doing the lights out, everybody is making what you see work.
You're right.
And
There's no other way for them to get recognition because in a film, 9 billion names go at the end, but on a gig, you hear nothing. So I think it's brilliant for that because you can then really relate to people. People turn around and say, "Oh yeah, there's a guy there. He's making
yeah,
the music come out the speakers." Oh, see,
yeah,
that's what does it because it's a thing. The community isn't just the band and the crowd; it's everything around it. That whole
yeah.
management level.
It
Yeah.
is. And also, I quickly learned that if you do that, the next time you go back to the venue, anything's possible. People will
Yes.
bend over backwards because all you've done is point out their contribution. But to us, or to me, that's no big deal. That's a given. But hardly anybody else does it.
No.
So when you come back, everybody is just like they can't do enough for you. And I think that's a part of that. That is definitely a part of the whole Milton Keynes thing as well, because we'd turn up and instantly it would be like we'd know all the crew,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, for tonight everyone's in the band, we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And I think people respond to that more than anything else.
Absolutely, because they then become part of that show. And that's the key thing. There's nobody likes a smart ass who comes through that door and said, "Where's the towels? I want to see you in your office now." But
Yeah,
somebody who comes in and says, "Everybody all right?" I was working at the Apollo the other night and I had to review the venue and I was looking. It was a guy called Jordan something. He was a country and western artist, country star. And so their crew came out and this guy goes, "You know a lot more about this place than me. How do you think we should play tonight? He hasn't played to a sellout crowd before here yet. And this is the first sellout crowd. What do you think we should?" And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this is amazing. And the girl with
yeah,
him was going, "What will happen is these are the kind of tickets and these are the little stickers. If they have these stickers on, their people will allow in and will actually come to them and take them in different places and do this with them. The rest of the stuff is up to you." Said we trust the security and everything. We know how good this venue is. So what we're going to do. And I'm thinking, oh, I wish we'd had this when I was so
yeah,
many more times. It was because that was what it was like with rock artists. That was what it was like with thrash artists. It was just brilliant. And I mean, even if you take people in the rock world, they don't take themselves too seriously. I mean, I always remember Ian Gillan coming on stage and he ran on, picked the mic up when he was in the Ian Gillan band, and he went, "Well, I've still got my slippers on, I'll be back in a minute." Runs off the stage, comes back on with his boots on. Then he goes, "Bernie Marsden, what are you doing in there?" And Bernie, it's this voice, "I live in Milton Keynes." He goes, "Get up here, we've got a guitar." Give him a guitar. And so he came up on stage and started.
brilliant.
And you think, yeah, that's not being too serious because
Yeah,
it was just the brilliant kind of thing because they could see it was packed and the crowd would want a good time. Unless you're King's X when you play for 3.5 hours non-stop and everybody's going, "Oh God, we better go home."
well,
But that
look,
again is
I,
a
I know I've got to let you go, Chris, but I also kind of feel like we're halfway through a conversation,
yeah,
so
brilliant.
let's get part two booked in straight away.
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
And because that, yeah, we've got so much more to talk about.
Yeah, this has been brilliant. Thanks ever so much for inviting me on, and
Don't
I'll
be
tell you
silly.
when the film comes out.